You may
Good
be seated.
morning. Good morning, everyone. What a beautiful October morning. I love it when it's not hot. I don't know if you've seen me, but I'm a polar bear and I like cold. I love it, and heat is just, I'm not built for that, man. But I am built for this. I love it. I love the weather. Oh, it's so much fun. I hope this morning blesses you because we are talking about I love this fight series. I love fighting. I love fighting movies. I love fighting games. I have a lot of friends who are world champion kickboxers. I just think it's fun. I enjoy it. I love movies like Tombstone. How many people don't like Tombstone? My wife was bound and determined not to see Tombstone. Wednesday night, because I taught on it during Real Faith, I just put it on because I had to finish it, all right? And so I put it on, and Kelsey was like, "Well, you're going to watch this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to," and she was just sucked in. And we got through. It was like 11 o'clock, which for my wife to stay up to 11 o'clock and not turn into a pumpkin is a big deal. She has a 9 o'clock bedtime, and that is mandatory. And she was like, "That movie was incredible." And I said, "I knew why I loved you and married you. I know it. I know why. This is that moment." Love fighting. I love fighting movies, the sun, and stopping the sun. Joshua 10, what a fun thing to talk about. God doing the impossible is one of my favorite things, actually, to talk about. It reminds me of a story in Corpus Christi. In Corpus Christi, we had a car. I love this car. It was my absolute favorite car I've ever had. It was a 1991 Toyota 4Runner, and it was beat up. Paint didn't match in areas. It was red, kind of maroon, kind of white, kind of whatever. I loved it. It was my favorite vehicle. I didn't call it the RAV4, no. I called it the Beast, because that's what I loved. And we lived near the ocean, went to the ocean in the Beast. What life could it get better? Well, as 91 4Runners tend to do, it broke down. And not only did it bite it bit it hard. I'm talking about the engine went out, carburetor, flux capacitor, everything you could ever imagine went out in that, and it was gone. And I was sitting there like, dadgum. And you see, my wife, and a lot of guys that will understand this, my wife absolutely had her heart set on one thing her whole life, is she wanted to have a minivan. Do I look like a minivan guy to you? No. That's not my cup of tea at all. I've had trucks, I've had all these other things, and a minivan? Oh. I said, honey, we'll pray on it. If every guy ever, I don't know what that means, we'll pray on it. I didn't know the power of my God. You see, there was another across town, there was a guy who worked in our church, he was a deacon. And he worked at a oil company, and he made a lot of money at this oil company. He was the accountant for the oil company. And he was working at this Amigo shop, and he was researching minivans for us. He got wind that we wanted one. And he spent 8 to 5 one day looking online for minivans. He got in so much trouble for looking at minivans that he got called into not his supervisor, the owner's office, and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I have this friend, and he's looking for minivans, and for some strange reason, I am engrossed in it. I'm engrossed, and I can't put it down, and I can't stop." And the owner, who was about as worldly as you can get in every which way, looked at the guy and was like, "Really? A minivan?" I was like, "Yeah, that's what his wife wants, and that's what he wants." He's like, look, his owner looked at him and said, "Can I just give you $5,000 and you'll go back to work?" And the deacon went, "I believe I can do that." So he gave him $5,000, and after he said that prayer, Arnold showed up at our house. And he showed up, and he knocked on the door and said, "Hey, Arnold, how you doing?" He's like, "Clint, I almost got fired, and I have $5,000 for your minivan." What he doesn't know is that Kelsey and I were looking at a minivan that cost $6,000, and he didn't know that. But we were missionaries at the time. We didn't have the other $1,000. So he said, "Okay, God gave us $5,000. We'll pray for the rest." We prayed. That night, a guy showed up. He was looking, and he was enthralled because we lived on a very busy street in Corpus Christi. He was enthralled with the Toyota 4Runner that was in our front yard. And he said, "How much do you want for that?" I said, "The engine doesn't work." I said, "The flux capacitor doesn't even work. What do you want for?" And he said, "I'll give you $1,500 for it. I want to turn it into a dune buggy. And this is the perfect frame and I was going to spend more money than that, but would you let me buy you for it for $1,500? And I was like, wow, yeah. We had $6,500 because I didn't take in consideration in this great state of Texas, you pay tax, title, and license. You're doing everywhere. I just didn't take that in consideration. And I had $6,500, enough for the van and enough for the tax, title, and license because we prayed a prayer. I still drive that minivan. I get made fun of for that minivan a lot because now our kids don't even ride in it. It's now deemed a death machine, but I love it and I'm not giving it up. Because that is not just my minivan, that's my mini blessing. God gave me that. And it's beat up. It is. It kind of reminds me of the beast, so maybe I should rename it, you know? I said that story because God does the impossible. He does it. He lives there. And we're going to visit kind of an impossible story. And go with me to Joshua chapter 10. We're going to start in 10 verse 7. I'm going to give a little setup for this. God stopped the sun, the moon, and the universe, everything. Joshua is about to take over the promised land, and he has already destroyed Jericho and Ai. He's destroyed 2 cities, giving him a huge foothold in this promised land. Israel's new allies were the Gibeonites and are being attacked by 5 different armies. So they have 5 armies attacking their one army. Joshua takes his army and he meets these 5 armies knowing what God said in 10:7. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them. I have given them into your hand." So let's go there. Joshua 10, verse 7. So Joshua and his entire army, including his best warriors, left Gilgal, set out to Gibeon. Verse 8, "Do not be afraid of them," the Lord said to Joshua, "for I have given you victory over them. Not a single one of them will be able to stand against you." Joshua traveled all night from Gilgal and took the Amorite armies by surprise. The Lord knew them and threw them into a panic. And the Israelites slaughtered great numbers of them at Gibeon. Then the Israelites chased the enemy along the road of Beth-Horon, killing them as long as the way of Azekah and Makkedah. Verse 11, "As the Amorites retreated down to the road of Beth-Horon, the Lord destroyed them with a terrible hailstorm from heaven and continued until it reached Azekah. The hail killed more enemies than the Israelites killed with the sword." Verse 12, "On that day, the Lord gave the Israelites victory over the Amorites. Joshua prayed to the Lord in front of all the people of Israel. He said, 'Let the sun stand still over Gibeon, and the moon over the valley of Lajan.' So the moon stood still, and the sun stood still, until the nation of Israel had defeated its enemies." God can do the impossible. Now, can I confess something to you? I'm still a huge skeptic. I like to prove stories. It's one of my favorite things. I read the Bible, and when I read the Bible, I read it to also grow and to go and to do things for the Lord, but I also read it, someone told me this, always read the Bible like you're trying to find a flaw because it makes you super intense in it. I never have found a flaw, and I never will. But when you come up to stories like this, it's easy to go, well, discrepancy. That's impossible. God held the sun in place. I like some cultural things that kind of give some headway. So, for those of you who have a skeptical and kind of skeptical mind like mine, just so you know, the Aztecs, the Babylonians, the Omaha tribe, the Chinese, the Egyptians, the Peruvians, the Mayans, and the Romans all speak about a day twice its normal length. That's interesting. Emperor Yao writ in the bamboo annuals of this was in parentheses, and this is all it says, very long day. Herodias, the Greek scholar, wrote and saw the hieroglyphics of Egypt and spoke of a day twice its normal length. This is actually backed up in 1900 by a guy named Ferdinand Crombati, who was an Egyptologist. He was an Egyptologist in the 1900s that found the hieroglyphics. And actually, what was funny, kind of humorous, is he got laughed out saying, that's not what it says. And he went to his deathbed saying, that is what it says. He found those writings. The Romans wrote of a day that the sun reversed its course, but this one's my favorite one. The Omaha tribe wrote about a day when the sun was caught in a rabbit trap and then escaped. And for me, for that to happen, I was like, how big was that rabbit trap? And who set that rabbit trap? In my mind. This is kind of humorous now, is it freaked the Aztecs out. They were terrified. They were like, the sun's supposed to be over here, and yet it's over here, and so the most logical explanation that we need to do is sacrifice everything. And that's what they did. They went nuts, trying to get the sun to go back to its normal place. And so I thought that was really interesting. So there's other cultures that say it happened, which I believe it happened. So let's get down to some interesting little earth facts. All right? The earth weighs, I got a picture of the earth if you'd show that, yeah. The earth weighs about 5.9 sectillion tons. That's a big number. What we have, show the picture of Mount Everest real quick. This is Mount Everest. It's the biggest, largest point that we have. I like this picture right here because you can barely see it. But you see a car right there compared to Mount Everest. Huge. Mount Everest is 357 trillion tons. Everest, by Earth's weight, if you divide the two, it would take 16,728,291 Mount Everests to equal what the weight of the Earth is. That's huge. And we're on it. And God benched it at one of his child's requests. That's incredible to me. That's scary to me. How powerful is God? That's terrifying. And it makes me what I do, I bench 200. Makes that look really small. When I read that and I read what God did and what I did, I was like, man, I feel, what's the word? Insignificant compared to him. And he stopped it, and he held it. I just gave you the weight. There's orbital speeds. The Earth travels as fast around in an hour as LA to New York 6 times. And we're on that rock. And God stopped it. Because what's really funny is when we say God held the sun, God didn't hold the sun. God held the earth. He stopped the earth from moving. And if he stopped the earth at a one-man request, that's incredible. And I don't know if you're like me, but I really get wrapped up into this. If God, when I share something with God, I'm afraid God's not going to be fragile with it. I'm like, God, I got this really hard, difficult thing in my life, and I want to hand it to you, but I don't really know how you're going to handle it, God. I'm really kind of concerned, and I don't want to admit I'm weak again, and I don't want to do this. I don't know what to do, and I'm really concerned that God's going to take that fragile request and be like, and close it up. Because we get wrapped up in how powerful God is. What we forget, too, is that God is also so delicate that he stopped the world from spinning and stopped it, and no one fell down. That's never mentioned, that everybody on the earth went, whoa. How subtle and how delicate is our Lord? How powerful is he? Have you ever seen a motorcycle tire when it's upside down? I have an uncle that works on motorcycles. He had a motorcycle turned upside down, and the wheel was just going crazy, and it was a joke as a kid. He's like, hey, Clint, try to grab it and stop it. That's going what, maybe 20 miles an hour? And God took something going 6,875 miles per hour and went, that guy's powerful. Our God is huge. Our God is massive. Our God is stronger. Our God is a wonder. There is no God like any other. He's huge. And he benched it. There is no problem too big or too small that God cannot handle. And when I pray something and I think that it's impossible, I fear that God will not be fragile with it. That's a lie from Satan, because God is going to be fragile with it. I've learned this is something that's taken me a long time to learn, and I love our church because we've embraced it, is that there is no power, there is no problem in this world that is too big for God and his community. There's nothing in this world that God cannot look at and community around you can look at and go, we cannot handle that together. We can do this. That just gives me hope. You must believe God can do the impossible if you're going to request him to do the impossible. Let's go to Mark chapter 11 real quick. Mark 11:20. You see, Jesus, he was on his way to Jerusalem. He found this fig tree, and he cursed the fig tree because it didn't have any fruit. So let's go back there. They're coming back and they see this. In Mark 11, verse 20. In the morning as they went along, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots. Verse 21, Peter remembered and said to Jesus, Rabbi, the fig tree you cursed has withered. Verse 22, have faith in God, Jesus answered. I tell you truly, if anyone says to this mountain, go throw yourself into the sea, and it does not doubt in their heart, but believes that what they say will happen, it will be done for them. Verse 24, therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be done for you. And when you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive them, so that your Father in heaven can forgive you. How powerful is prayer? How powerful is prayer? And then I got to ask this question. How powerful is prayer? How much have I taken for granted my requests to God versus what God can actually do? I don't know about you, but mostly what I pray is food prayers. I do. Like going to Krispy Kreme when it's really hot and like, God, somehow make this healthy, amen. You know, I mean, like, we always do that. Always before a meal. And there's a time and place for that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I believe if that's the only prayer we're praying, we're forgetting how big and powerful God is. He's not only the God who created a delicious Krispy Kreme, which thank God for that. He's also the God who can miraculously cure you from cancer. And he's also the God that can make you look at your past and not hate who you love, who you are anymore. He's that God. He's a redeeming God. He's a loving God. He's a God that does the most amazing things. And there's a time and place for food prayers, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm just saying there's a time and place for them. You got to pray both. You got to pray both, God, thank you for this meal because you're the only one who's given it, but also, God, thank you for this church and everything you are doing here, and God, grant us the wisdom and the power to go do what we need to do in the community. There are those small prayers, and there are also those big prayers like, God, hold the sun. Do you want the impossible? If you want the impossible, you must request the impossible. Joshua asked God. He says, God, please hold the earth. And the two to fulfill what God had said. You see, Joshua was there because God sent him. Joshua was there because God sent him to do the will of the Father. And in our own lives, if we're going to pray that God holds the sun, and he holds the sun, we can't get wrapped up and go, oh, the sun stopped. That we forget we have a job to do. That we have something that we are doing on this earth. We have something like, let's take the pumpkin patch. You're not just selling pumpkins, people. What you're doing is you're trying to create opportunities to connect with someone and talk to someone and let them know in life that they don't have to go through life alone, that there's a community here that can love them and appreciate them. Oh, by the way, do you want a pumpkin? And it's that secondary. I could care less if you buy a pumpkin. I could care everything that you know you have a community of people that want to rally behind you and love you in a way that you've never been loved. That's fulfilling the mission of God. And when God holds the sun in people's lives, it's not so that we can get caught up that the sun is stopped. It's so that we can do a work. Thank God Joshua didn't see that the sun was that's like 6 hours and it's still in the same spot. Everybody look. No, he said, we got a job to do. Everybody go. We cannot get wrapped up in our own stuff that we forget God sent us here with a mission and a purpose. And what am I trying to do in this world? Or is it what is God trying to do in this world? I read a really interesting story this week. I really thought it was funny. I thought it was cute, but it was very poignant. It was a story about a carrot farmer and a ranch hand, a ranch horseman. What do you call those? Ranchers. Horseman rancher. All of them. But the carrot farmer grew this carrot that was incredible in every which way. It was massive. It was the biggest carrot that he had ever grown. And he looked at it and he said, oh my goodness, this carrot is massive and huge. I want to give it as a gift to my king. So he took it before his king and he said, King, this is the greatest and best carrot I have ever grown. I give it to you as a gift because I love you and you are a great king. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the king was just taken back by the man's offering. And he said, you clearly are a man of the soil and know how to grow things. Therefore, I'm going to give you the plot of land that is right next to yours, and you can grow it. And I don't even need the proceeds. You keep the proceeds because your king is so honored by your gift. Thank you. Well, the rancher heard this, and he said, if he did that amazing thing because he gave him a carrot, I'm going to give him a gift he'll never forget. And so the rancher comes in with this giant steed, and he says, my king, this is the greatest horse I have ever bred. There will be no other horse like him. And therefore, because he is the greatest thing in the world, I am giving you this gift, my liege. And the king looked at him and said, thank you. You may go. The rancher was struck. He was like, but the farmer? And the king looked at him and said, rancher, this is what you forgot. The carrot farmer wanted to give me a gift. You wanted to give me a horse for yourself. How are we serving God? Are we serving God because he is God and he is good and he is everything like the carrot farmer? Or am I serving God to get something? And I struggle with that. I struggle with that because when God holds the sun, it's not for my sake, it's for his. It's for his. So we know that if we believe God can do the impossible, we must request him to do the impossible, and then we must act like he can do the impossible. I'm good with belief, and I'm good with asking, but acting, that's where it gets hard. When I'm supposed to when I'm supposed to live out my faith, there's an area that I'm kind of afraid that we're going to get to, and a lot of churches have got to it. It's a place where it says, I'm going to be uncomfortable. This is something very important. It's near and dear to my heart. As a church, we are never called to be comfortable. Ever. I don't think God even cares about our comfort. And we think if we surround ourselves with worldly things like a comfortable couch or a nice car, or a big TV, or a nice family, or a beautiful wife, or, I'm speaking of me, some people's beautiful husband in here, obviously. But if I surround myself with these awesome things, that will bring me what I'm striving for, which is peace, and that's a lie. Because Satan will not give you peace. Only God will. And what God is saying, I'm not going to give you peace unless you do my will. That's truly what it is. And it's awkward, and it's uncomfortable, but it's the most peaceful I've ever been. Sometimes you won't know what the day holds, but nothing will shake you. You're standing on the rock. And I forget that. I forget that God doesn't want us to be comfortable. Jesus didn't, and there's actually a theology out there that says this. That says, hey, you give me $100, God's going to give you $1,000. You give me $1,000, God's going to give you $10,000. You're going to give me $10,000, God's going to give me $1 million. God's going to do $2 million. You got to do $3 million. You're sitting there like, and that's kind of how it sounds. But Jesus didn't come so I could be a millionaire. He came that I can get right with God. That's why he came. He came so we have a job. Do you know that each person in this room has a God-given gift? And you are good at it. But we hold it back because we are afraid what others are going to think to the very people that we should love them and accept them no matter what. If you have a voice, use it. If you have offerings, use it. If you are good at discipleship, use it. You are good at connecting, use it. You are good at talking, use it. You are good at video games, use it. You are good at movies, use it. I think there's a theme here. Use it. And I think that's how Joshua approached that battle. God held the sun, do everything possible to win. And when they started going down the road, they saw the hailstorms fall down and they saw God actually fight for them. And they were like, wow, I've never seen a God that does this. He's incredible. He held the sun. The world doesn't want comfort, guys. You know what it wants? Peace, and that can only be found through us sharing Christ. And they're starving for it. They're starving for it. Romans 12:1 says this. I think it's a kind of funny verse, actually. Rick actually had a really interesting point of view on it. It says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. When I heard Rick speak, he said, you know what the problem with a living sacrifice is? We always try to crawl off the altar. That's so true. That's so true. I don't want to do that anymore. I need Jesus' help to stay there. So when God holds the sun for Joshua, it wasn't so that he could feel comfort. It was so that he and all of Israel would experience God's peace. And how can we join the battle when God holds the sun in others' lives? I have a video to show you guys. I think it'll really sum up what we can do when God holds the sun in other people's lives. He's going to do something impossible.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful. and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
So there's two things from that. When God is holding the sun in other people's lives, what can I do to help them in their battle? The first thing is you can connect with them. Why did God hold the sun for Joshua? You know what's really funny is Joshua actually asked for the wrong thing. He says, God, hold the sun. The funny part about the sun is it doesn't move. We move around the sun. So theoretically, God could have looked at that prayer and like, done. Did nothing. Hold the sun. The sun is held. But what's funny, because God and Joshua were connected and he knew the response. When Joshua said, God, hold the sun, God answered that prayer, even though it was the wrong thing to ask. I don't know about you, but I find huge comfort in that because there's a lot of times in situations that I have no clue what to pray for. Have you ever been in that situation? Yeah, that's me. A lot of times I don't know what to say. And thank God we have a God who can look beyond that and go, I know the heart behind what you're saying, and I'm going to give what you need. So we connect. We connect in a way. We connect with their actions. And because God and Joshua were connected, God was connected with Joshua's needs, verse 14 happened. There has never been a day like it or since, or a day when God listened to man. When God held the sun like that. So the first thing we do is connect. The next thing we do is empathize. God empathized with Joshua's need. When was the last time you empathized with someone? When was the last time you looked from someone who you had nothing in common with? And you're not from different worlds, you're from totally different planets. And you look things through their eyes. You know, I'll share this quick little story. We had a game in Corpus Christi when I was a campus minister called Humans vs. Zombies. And this game was a 6-day game of tag, and people got behind it like crazy. And it was one of those things that it kind of took the school by storm. We didn't expect it to be that popular. It was so popular that the president of the university had a meeting with myself, and he said, can you do that again in like a month and a half? I have never seen students, I've never had so many complaints that students weren't part of a program like that until your program. Can you do it again? I was like, sure, we can do it again. But from that, I got to do something that I've really never done anything like it before, and I don't think I'll ever get to do anything like it again. These people came up, and they were from the zombie convention of Corpus Christi. And they said, we're having a zombie church. Would you give the lesson? What do you say? I'm like, Jesus loves you. What do you say? I was honestly at a loss. I was like, and thank God the Holy Spirit kicked in. I was like, I'd love to. What? I got there and I said, guys, God believes in zombies like crazy. And you're looking at one because I was dead to the world. And God made me alive. It's just I'm not hungry for a stupid thing like brains or knowledge or education. What I'm hungry for is righteousness and see what God can do in your life. And if you want to be a zombie with me, you do it. Come forward and let's do it. Huge response. God took the sun and he held it. And I was like, I don't know what I do. And God's like, don't worry, I got this. I got this. Because God doesn't make us, he doesn't equip the called. What is it? He doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. So all we have to be is available for people, to connect with them, to see what kind of world they live in. And they may not have anything with us in common, but you'll get to see freedom and truth. We had like 15 baptisms from that zombie convention. That's crazy. That's crazy. Acting vulnerable and having courage to share your hardships and dying to self, and sharing and knowing that you will be blessed. And the person that is sharing will be blessed because they know that they are not the only ones going through hardships. The action of dying to self through singing songs or meeting with each other that you wouldn't usually meet, or whatever a church does, is a beautiful thing for the outside world to see. The church is not striving to make people comfortable, but to make people holy. So I want to challenge you guys. If you empathize like God and you connect like God, then you will act like God. And you will save and you will help others. I'm going to leave you with this quote. How much happier would we be? How much more of us would there be if we allowed the hammer of the high God to smash our cosmos? I want to challenge you. God is holding the sun in other lives, and he's doing the impossible things in lives today. Will you be a part of the fight? And will you join us and connect and empathize with people? Maybe you're looking there and go, I need that hammer. I need to be crushed. Or maybe you're looking like, I've been that rancher and I really want to be that carrot farmer. Whatever it is, as we stand and as we sing, please come forward. We would love to pray with you.
There's a fountain